Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with Riot Kent, and we are back. It's January 2nd, Sunday night. We go back into work tomorrow, and we're here with the patch post-mortem. So how was your break, Kent?
It was good. Played a lot of TFT. Also got some time away from TFT. It was refreshing, and I'm ready to get back to end this 4-week long patch.
Yeah, I definitely played a little more TFT than I probably should have, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the patch here. So we had 11.24, which was 1 week, and then we had 11.24B, which was 3 weeks. So 11.24 was, if I remember right, it was the like the Cho'Gath meta.
Yep.
And then we fixed that, and then it turned into the probably the ultimate greed meta I think we might have ever seen in TFT.
Yeah, it's like a mix of greed, but people like also saving health. Yeah, but it's like really late game oriented meta where players went fast eight on in stage 4 and just
Yep.
played for 5 costs.
Yep. Yordles and Merc into as many 5 costs as you can grab.
Yep.
So
Yep. And it didn't help that it was a long patch because like early on, people discovered this is strong. And then like as people played more and more, like not only did the meta shift more towards like more people doing this, so that allowed other people to do this because people aren't as aggressive, but also people started to optimize it more and more and more. And then
yep.
it just came to like this where we're at now, basically, where like most of the lobby is trying to play this thing with Morello, Guardian Angel, aiming for Kaisa, that kind of thing.
Yep. All right, so we have a lot to go through, so I'm gonna try to skip through a lot of the stuff here, but let's cover the big ones here. So first off, the hearts and crests, the big augment change where they started giving champions. I'll be honest, I mean, I'm biased because I was the one who kind of came up with this, but I think this worked out really, really well, actually. And now these augments feel good and competitive. I think things like Bodyguard Heart are now like actually really competitive. So I don't know. This felt like a slam dunk to me, and honestly helped the game a lot.
Yeah, I think like for like a launch of this, big change, this was like slam dunk. I think like when you see these, you're now actually thinking, do I want this? I might actually take this. Whereas before you'd be like, no, I'd never take this on stage 1 4. Some tuning to do around it, but it's like that's like minor things, and this was definitely a really really good change for the game.
Yeah, it's definitely created some really cool moments for sure. So
Yep.
cool. All right. Skipping, that's a lot of it here. I think the one we can talk about is like, it's still funny to figure out, but should Scrap Soul be emblems or a soul? I still can't figure that one out. I think it's emblems, but because it feels good to get the extra 2 items, but you know.
Yeah, feels good to do extra 2 items. You can also make like another like a secondary carry with the scrap soul. So it's that seems really good. It's just you'll lose out on the 8 gold. So like would you really take this on, stage 1 4? Or, would you prefer that 8 gold? It's kind of a
Yeah.
hard decision.
Yep. All right. Cool. Okay, into the large changes. Broken stopwatch. We moved it down to gold and lowered the stun duration. This augment, I think, continues. I don't know. I feel like this augment's never going to be in a good spot, is my honest opinion, because if you look at it in the data, it's like garbage if you take it early, and only good if you take it at 4-6, because basically it says, hey, if you have exactly Jin and Oriana ready to go, yeah, take the augment, but otherwise, it's not worth the risk. So, but at
Yeah,
least
I mean, I
this
think
is directionally correct.
yeah, I think the change was good at least because like there's some players who take it like this thing feels broken, and it's like if it feels broken to some people, like that's good. That means like they were able to make it work in certain scenarios. Whereas
Yeah.
before, it was more just like it looks cool, and it also didn't really show up often. So like I think this was like you said, directionally good.
Duet. This was a big one. We talked about Duet for a while because it was the
Oof.
worst performing augment forever. I think this hit the nail on the head. I think we overshot it a little. I think
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
little too good right now. But honestly, I'd rather it be a little too good than an awful bait that forces you into a 6th place.
yeah. I agree 100%. It's like good change. We probably shot it too far, but
Yep.
also it became a socialite meta anyways, which like exacerbated that overshoot.
Yep. Featherweights. I think this was a good change. I think featherweights are still good. Featherweights 1 and 2 might be, I don't know. Featherweights 2 is like I think the questionable one, but Featherweights 3 is still very good. So
Yep, yep. I think it's still a good augment for people. It's a specific thing that people want to play, and so I think this was a good change.
yeah, I think if anything, obviously the 5 cost meta has made featherweights not as appealing. But I think if that shifts at all, featherweights goes back to being a very good augment.
Agree.
All right, this one's a controversial one. This is the whole Innovator Heart can't be offered as the first choice, and Innovator Soul can't be offered, or can only be offered as a third choice. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that this was something that we needed to do, but I think we should have done more tuning along with it more quickly. So then, right now you don't see innovators as much, but also just that, not being able to turn on 5 innovators early has made the trait overall just a lot more weak. I think we should have preemptively buffed it, just because it would get a lot weaker with this change.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I think this was a necessary change because if you remember, like Innovator 5 at 2-1, for example, was just like nutty beyond belief, right? And so like we've removed that part of the curve where it was nutty, but we didn't compensate for the part where you were running Innovator 5 at 4-6 and it
Yep.
was Garbo. And so like it's kind of still not in a great spot. I've had some okay Innovator games, but you have to really high roll with it. So overall, I think this change was correct. But there are some other changes that were like kind of make this a miss also.
Yep. Yep.
Item grab bag 1 and 2 no longer grants Reforger. I think for item grab bag 1, clear success.
Yep.
I think for item grab bag 2, it's interesting because I think it's a generic augment. It's not supposed to be super appealing. It's supposed to be an opt out. I think though the Reforger might have been necessary just to prevent the case where it's like I saw somebody get 2 Sunfires, for example, once from
Yep.
this. And it's like maybe we should put 1 Reforger back on this.
I agree 100%. I think one Reforger helps save like the really feel bad low roll moments that happen, and it's a prismatic comic. You just kind of generally want to feel good about it. It's like rare, and when it happens, it's like holy crap, this is exciting. So we should keep one Reforger in there for like safety purposes.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to talk about this one for a little bit here. Level up can no longer be offered after choosing March of Progress, and March of Progress can now only be offered as the first augment choice. There's starting to be this line that I think we're going to have to draw a really careful line here, which is a lot of people want the augment system to not offer them bad choices or not offer them, situations that feel less optimal, right? It's like, hey, I only had one Arcanist. Why am I being offered Arcanist Heart? Or I only had, I was running built different. Why am I being offered any souls whatsoever? And it's like, I get that, but at the same time, we can't have the augment system always be giving you the perfect choices. And so we're going to have to figure out where that line is exactly, because that line is really fuzzy right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like sometimes, that's a decision. It's also like sometimes that's a decision you kind of want to make. Also, it's like if you get a prismatic like thing that contradicts your gold tier one, would you want to do a change also? Or like maybe some players would want to, and maybe it's exciting that way.
Right. So I think it's fine for now, but I think we're gonna have to come up with a better framework for what that line is for like when is an augment not allowed to be offered? What makes it so totally, kind of like we have that rule with items, right? Like when do items pop off? When it's literally zero benefit. We've made that hard line. We can follow that hard line. We're gonna have to do the same thing with augments, I think.
Yeah.
So all right. March of Progress, XP per round 4 to 5, and Prismatic. I think this was a great change, and secretly, this is one of the best. I think it's one of the harder ones to play, but it is one of the best, and even in the data, it looks really good. So I think this was just a success.
Yeah, and I think this also just generally makes the augment more fun because 5 XP per round means you can go actually get to level 8 at a reasonable time. So yeah, I think good change overall, I think.
Yep. Spellblade. What are your thoughts on this actually? Since you worked hard on this one.
Yeah, I did this one. So like I honestly like the previous Spellblade was really boring, unsatisfying, and it didn't really work out power wise either. And this one, I think it definitely hits the like there's a specific way to play this, and it works out when you play it that way. I think it landed weak. I think the numbers were too conservative, and so like if we buff it, I think we get to a good spot.
Fascinating. Data wise, it looks like middle of the road. But I think for an augment that requires you to play a specific trait in a specific way, middle of the road's probably not where it wants to be.
Yeah.
Windfall. I certainly got a lot of grief for nerfing the tier 1 here. The 20 to 15. And we B patched the later part of it. But I will say I stand by that Windfall as on 1-4 being 15 gold is correct. I don't think we need to buff it. I think the whole point of Windfall is it's the I don't like my other two options. This is my okay third option. It's not supposed to be competitive with things like Scholar Soul or anything like that. So I think this was correct, and I think getting 20 gold at 1-4 is just too much.
Yeah, I think one thing to like, I've seen some players talk about like, oh, why are the souls 8 gold? This is 15 gold. It's like barely better. Like Rich Get Richer is 10, but it's like that extra 5 gold helps you make the next intervals a lot faster in stage 2. And so by being one interval higher than everyone else, or like higher than the people who took, I don't know, like Rich Get Richer, which like you can't even get those two, but like just scenario in this scenario, it's like you can make 50 way faster. And by being able to do that, you're kind of ahead of everybody else in the game. And so this is just like the gold, like give me lots of gold augment. And that actually makes a difference. Even though it's only 5 gold, it makes a lot of difference because of the interest.
Yep. Cool. All right. Traits. Challenger. We nerfed Challenger basically 4, 6, and 8. This one's fascinating to me because I didn't look at the data until like literally a couple hours ago. And before I looked at the data, I was on the like, Challenger is actually still one of the top meta comps right now. It's like, the Kaisa 5 cost, your Urgot Chemtech, and then Challenger's like right below it. And I still feel that way. But data-wise, 4 and 6 actually look kind of bad now, which kind of surprised me. But overall, I think this nerf was correct. And I think without this nerf, Kaisa would have been even more out of control in those Challenger builds. So I think this was correct.
Yeah, I think it was correct. I think part of why it might look bad in the data, and this is something we can talk about when we get back to work, but that basically 5 costs are kind of running the show right now, and so like 4 cost builds aren't as successful as those kind of builds.
The Chemtech rework. So I think this Chemtech rework was a success with one big caveat, because I think it is a more fun build now. I think 7 and 9 are still a little weak, but now at least we have numbers to tune them. It feels a bit better. But I think 3 Chemtech ended up much stronger than we intended.
Yeah. Yep. Something we didn't. We knew 3 Chemtech was going to feel better. We didn't think it'd be that much stronger, and especially end game with that like 25% damage reduction and the healing. It became really, really good later in the game. So.
Yep. All right. Innovator 5 nerf and 7 nerf. I'll say the 7 nerf I think was correct. If anything, 7 still feels good and looks good in the data, but 5 though. I think this was a pretty big miss.
I agree. I don't think we needed to do this. If anything, we should have gone kind of the other direction because we nerfed Innovator, Heart and Soul.
Okay, Mutant Blade Rush. I think this is good now. I think this is fine. I think this made a slight difference. At least it's playable now. It's still not one of my personal favorite ones, but like it feels a lot better now.
Yeah, agree. I think directionally this was correct.
Clockwork. I think Clockwork's finally getting to where it should be for 4 and 6. So I don't know. This felt right.
Yeah, it's still not like something that's like sought after, but when someone gets like a Clockwork Soul, they're like, oh, wow, 4 actually looks like a lot of attack speed, and this is so I think this was good.
Garen. I think this nerf was correct. I think the Kog'Maw Protector comp still quite good. I think Garen doesn't need to be doing as much damage. I think this is just a solid change. I think poor Garen 1 and 2, though. We've got to figure out a way to buff Garen 1 and 2 without Garen 3, aka the usual Protector curse that we've been dealing with since set 3, but,
Yeah, and I think, this build isn't as popular right now because, 5 costs are so popular, but like once they're out of the picture or like, lower in the rankings, this is going to come back, and, Garen needed this nerf.
Okay, Katarina. Let's talk about Katarina. This one's fascinating. 180 to 160, 225 to 220. There were concerns that we didn't nerf this enough, right? Now she went from dominating the meta at 225, at 2-star, to one of, if not the worst 2 costs at 200. It is fascinating to me that champion lives or dies on such a tiny threshold.
Part of this, I mean, like this change was definitely required and like needed, but I think part of this change is just the meta shifted. She can't really beat the people that is currently meta right now. She's not, they're not like backliner only type comps where she would run them over.
If that's the true, what change do you think there is? We'll have to look at the rest of the patch notes, but is there some other change that you think made an even bigger difference to Katarina than this nerf?
I mean, I'm just thinking about like her matchup against Kaisa. It's like she's never gonna be able to kill that Kaisa. She can't. Kaisa would dash away from her every single time, and she'll get stuck on a Colossus eventually. And
Right,
just
but
you
this
know,
patch, Kaisa didn't get any changes other than a bug fix, right?
right. But that was like a really big buff.
Okay, so then we'll have to talk about that at Kaisa then, because maybe that
Yeah,
buff was just the thing. Because again, I look at Katarina and I'm just like, not that much changed, but yet she went from incredibly dominant to again garbage. Like data shows her as the worst 2 cost by a large margin. It's just fascinating to me.
yeah. I mean, I think like early game, if you use a Katarina, she can still item hold pretty well. But it's like later in
Eh,
the game, she just
she
later.
falls off by like 3-2.
Yeah, she falls off really quickly.
So, which
Yeah.
again, fascinating to me that 25 damage made that difference, you know? So, all right. Trundle, I think these nerfs were correct. Trundle's still a very good early game champion. An early Trundle 2 is still like a monster. Trundle 3, maybe not as late game dominant as he was in the previous patch, but Trundle 2 still seems quite good.
Trundle feels like kind of where he needs to be right now, actually. So
Yeah.
I think these changes were good.
All right. Echo, the nerf. I think this is correct. Echo's still quite good. If anything, maybe this is one of the big changes that really hit Katarina also, actually, looking at this, is like because Katarina was always paired with a good Echo. This was
Right.
a decent chunk of attack speed, which means Katarina's casting less, so that could be a
It's
big part
surprising
of
though
it.
because Echo 3 is still really good as a unit too. But I guess like yeah, if you're looking at like magnitude of change, this
Yeah.
does affect the comp a lot.
There's also the Blitz nerf from previous as
Yeah.
well and stuff like that, so we'll get into those. But yeah, maybe there's just a combination of too many things. Shaco. I think Shaco is actually surprisingly underappreciated and quite good. Early Shaco 1 and Shaco 2 with the right items dominates the like stage 1 through 4, which is what a 3 cost should do. Like Shaco feels like I think right where he should be.
That I agree with that. Yeah, Shaco with the right items is a monster in the mid game, which he should be. Same with like Samira and other Malzahar, these other 3 costs. So yeah.
Tarek, I think, is another one that probably is where he should be. Um, the thing I don't like about Tarek, just from a design standpoint, is that like he feels like a socialite bot more than an actual champion. But Arcanist Tarek no longer quite the dominant monster he was in the previous patch. But again, that was only 50 off. Like, I don't know. This feels right. I think Tarek's finally where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I think I agree. This was a good change.
Vex. I'm going to call it now, considering we already B-patched it, but this was an overnerf. We
Yeah.
way overswung this. I think we were a little too afraid. I think, you'll see it in the B-patch changes, but specifically, we were underestimating how big that stacking shield bonus was, especially because it multiplies off itself. So it's like 25% and then 25% off that. And so, like, in some fights, it was scaling to ridiculous proportions, and that was leading to the feeling that she was wildly OP. We probably could have just done that number, and maybe the damage. The damage was the other big one that
Right,
I
the
think was
damage is a
correct.
good one.
So
Yeah, I think Vex's damage definitely needed to come down, so I think that was a good change. But I agree, it's just the stacking bonus, we just overshot that, along with the base shield. So she just got a lot less tanky.
Fiora finally feels like a 4 cost. So seems
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I mean, I think this was good. I think I'm not really sure if like, she does a lot of physical damage and not much true damage, and I think the true damage part of her kit is what makes her unique. So I'm not sure if like, we should just keep going down this like give her more AD and like not buff the true damage. But I directionally I think this was good. Like Fiora actually feels really good this patch also.
I think that's a fair point because right now her itemization is like I think a lot of people are still really struggling to figure out her itemization, and when they figure it out, she might actually be OP. But yeah, there might be because you're right. It is like 80-90% physical damage
Yeah.
on that champion, but I will say true damage on champions has never been particularly healthy, so I prefer that way. But it is a less unique identity, so I'm with you there.
Yep.
Jin. I think this change actually landed really well. I think Jin's not quite doing the insane amount of damage he was before. You still can see some really strong Jins with like Sniper's Nest or Force Sniper with the right items. But him getting to cast more often feels pretty good. I think he struggles a bit with the Colossus meta, but I've seen some Jins do pretty well. So overall, I think this was a good change.
Yep, good change. I think he struggles in the current meta. There's some scenarios where he does really well this patch also. So, I think this change was overall just a good change.
Same with Lux. I think right now there's a big I feel like a lot of people are really thinking Lux is quite bad. I know some people in lobby 2 have had success with Lux. I think she's a very good top 4 comp. Lux has a different problem, which is that her items are very, very specific. You need exactly blue buff, i.e. Jeweled Gauntlet. Otherwise, she's really hard to use. But other than that, I think this change was correct, and now at least that perfect combination, that ceiling has come down.
Yeah, Lux actually feels like she's in a good spot now. I think we needed, if we think Arcanists are weak, I think we need to tune things around her rather than actually Lux, because Lux or Academy is weak. Then we need to tune things around her and not exactly her as a champion.
Orianna, I know I was nervous as hell about this before, the article was talking about Orianna myths or whatever. But actually it ended up being just fine and maybe even not enough. So
yeah, there's been a few times where I've seen Orianna pop off as a carry, and it's been really cool to see. Finally, she is weaker. It could be because of the meta, but we'll have to do more analysis on the data for that one.
Yeah, I think if you compare her to like Urgot and Yone though, she's still just so much weaker. And we're going to talk about it a bit, I think, next patch, because like a lot of our AP casters right now are so reliant on Socialite too. So
yeah, for the mana.
Sion, I think this change was correct. I think Sion actually feels like a real champ now. But there is a problem we're still dealing with, is that Sion right now is so heavily dependent on his relationship with Galio. Sion by himself, not really that impressive still. Sion with Galio, really freaking impressive. So.
Yeah, I think this change was definitely really good in Sion. Personally, I feel like Sion is a really, really good unit now. Even aside from Galio, like Galio definitely makes him into like S tier, but I think he's already a really, really good champion. And so this change, lets him compete with Braum as like a frontliner that you would actually, want a 2-star. And he's very good for your econ because he's only worth 12 gold, and that takes up 2 slots, and he does a lot for his health or for what he is. So, for his cost.
For what it's worth, for next patch, Sion 1 still looks like garbage in the data. So,
yeah, Imperials. Like yeah.
Well, but I mean, even without Imperials, right? But again, at the end of the game, he actually spikes up to be the best 4 cost again because I think of his relationship with Galio. So
okay.
All right, 5 costs. Akali. Oh, that's right. This was the start of this patch where Akali was dominating. This felt like a placebo buff. We talked about this in the B patch a little bit, but this was a placebo buff. I don't think this buff actually did any harm, but a lot of the other changes around it started to lead to this 5-cost meta. And Akali, specifically her execute threshold and Archangel, I think as players really started to figure out what Archangel was capable of, led to some very powerful Akalis. So this definitely ended up being a miss, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think this change was good because Akali was so when we were making this decision, it was definitely the right decision because of how bad Akali was at the time. But yeah, we ended up going back on it. So
yeah, which is interesting because again, we'll talk about it a little later with where she is now in the data. So
yep.
Galio, so buffed his HP, nerfed his AD a lot. I'm still salty because again, I got a lot of criticism on this one. And guess what? Clapio's still insanely busted. Still very, very good. He's not quite Tom Kench or Kaisa levels, but he's just below them. So this nerf was not only correct, but honestly might not have even been enough.
Yeah, I agree. I think we could have gone harder on the AD, which is surprising. We took 30 AD off of this unit, and it's still he's clapping people. So good directional changes, probably not enough. Need to think about him some more and see what we want to do for next patch.
Jace. I think Jace ranged finally feels like what he's supposed to. You get a Jace with the one I had success with was a Ginsu, i.e. Last Whisper, and it was it does a lot of damage. Does really, really well. I think Jace melee, this might have been an overnerf.
Yeah, I think by hitting both parts of him, I think we hit him too hard. He's not as tanky as he used to be. He fell really hard this patch. So definitely shouldn't have. I think we definitely overnerfed here.
Jinx. I know again, Jinx is not quite, again, she's not Kaisa, Tom Kench, Galio, But I actually think Jinx is right where she should be. I think she does a shocking amount of damage with the right itemization and the right comp. I think Jinx is exactly where a 5 cost should be.
Yeah, I actually think I feel like Jinx is being carried by Urgot. Like if you see a Jinx without like an Urgot with some items, she just doesn't compare to
So
most of the 5 costs.
so I won a game with 6 bodyguard Jinx. The items were IE Last Whisper Bodyguard. The only thing I had was Sister. I did not have Twin Shot. That Jinx did a ton of damage.
I think I mean we'd have to see the lobby because like if you have 6 bodyguards and you're against like people without Last Whisper or
Oh, I beat a Kaisa. I beat a Morello Kaisa, and like it wasn't an issue. That's what I'm saying. She does enough damage. Her big weakness continues to be the fact that she basically suicides into the enemies and gets targeted. So she's very fragile. And the really dirty one that we haven't talked about is she doesn't switch targets. So like let's say she's attacking a Scion with Bramble and Gargoyle, then she ults, lands in the back line, and then keeps attacking the Scion.
Right.
That's her big weakness right now. But as far as like when she actually starts attacking the backliners, the amount of damage and AoE she does is insane. I do not think this champion needs to do more damage. And that's what I'm saying. I think she's where she needs to be with the 5 cost. She may just have too big of a weakness with like a really strong frontliner she gets stuck on.
I could see that. And if we're planning to also bring down the other 5 costs, that also puts her more into like a reasonable power level with the other 5 costs. So yeah.
Victor. So I've played a lot of Victor. I think this change was correct, but Victor is another victim, I think, of the Socialite meta. Trying to play Victor 2 without Socialite 2, Champ's garbage. Champ's absolute garbage. You can run Scholar 2, Shojin, whatever. It's just not enough. But then play a Victor 2 with blue buff, Jeweled Gauntlet, Socialite. Congratulations, you just won the lobby. And so I think, unfortunately, Victor... Like, I think this change was necessary, but I think we missed the actual problem with Victor here.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that one, but like I think Victor needed this nerf for sure. Victor was too good without any damage items. But it's like basically something that was supporting him is too powerful, and that's what we should have hit instead, is what you're arguing?
Well, I think the damage change was correct. I think you're actually the damage change was correct. Victor does the right amount of base damage and scales correctly with, like I said, Jeweled Gauntlet, i.e. Death, whatever. I think the mana change, though, is where we kind of messed up. I think the mana change just made him so reliant on Socialite 2 now, and it narrowed his ability to be played. That's all.
Got it. Yeah. I could see that. Especially with how he is currently in the meta.
Okay. Plus, the other thing is he's also very, like, sometimes he just whiffs the Kaisa, and that feels bad. The other thing he's a victim of is everyone's building GA. So,
right. He can't just one shot everyone. So,
all right. Blue buff. I think this item was the best we could do. Right. Like, it didn't solve the problem of there's no utility blue buff users, but it at least made the item more attractive. And like I said, I've built blue buff on Victor, and it's been worth it.
Yep.
So like, cool.
Yeah. This feels like a slam dunk. It was great. Like, I mean, I guess I can't say that because I pitched the change, but like also I think this is really good because late game, you have that blue buff and you put it on someone and you're like, yeah, my Braum gets a cast super early, or like my Janna gets a cast.
One of the most disgusting games I had on stream was Kaisa, specifically with blue buff Morello. It was only Kaisa 1, but just so that she would basically instantly Morello the enemy team, and that was really strong, so.
It's like blue buff Morello Twisted Fate, kind of just insta casting, and remember that meta? He's so strong.
Yep. Finally, Frozen Heart. I think this change was a slam dunk. This item is like very desirable now. I think Frozen Heart is very good now, and so I'm happy to see this.
This might be affecting that 6 challenger performance. We were kind of scared of this change. It ended up landing really well, actually. So happy that happened.
Yeah, the thing I like about this too is that the 6th challenger can beat it by building Quicksilver, but that actually does good things and creates a vulnerability to the comp that is good. And so it's like Yone actually has to make a really tough decision between Quicksilver and GA now, and I think that is very healthy for the game.
I've definitely seen like, a second row socialite hex or two people building, IE Runans. I'm like, oh, they're gonna play Yone, and then be like, I'm gonna slam a Frozen Heart, and it felt good about it late game.
Yep.
So
Yep.
having that decision is fun.
Yep. All right. Featherweights we already talked about. Gold reserves. This change is so good and so fun, and it just never comes up enough because most of the time when you're playing mercenary, you don't want to win anyway, and so this just hasn't really been an exciting augment to take. But it's a shame because it's so much fun.
Yeah, I mean I think the change was great, and it's like, even if it's like once in a while that people will actually play, or maybe just in their normal games or when they're trolling or whatever, it's like, at least it's like super fun now, and it's like usable more easily. So
Yep. All right, Stand
this
United. You go ahead. It's all
one.
you.
All right, so this one, okay, Stand United looked okay in the data. I mean, just like from playing, how bad it was early on, and even late game, you had to like have a specific play around for this, which is fine for our traits. Like for our augments, we want people to play around it, but it just felt math wise didn't work out to a lot of DPS increase. We talked to challenger players, some of them agreed, and it was like, okay, can we go up by one number? And I know Mort was kind of iffy on it, but we ended up shipping it.
Kinda iffy.
Yeah,
I was pretty vocal about this one.
yeah, and then we shipped it, and turns out it's very strong. Like even early on, it's not great, but like you kind of like commit to it so that you play for it late game, and like players are okay with that, and so, so probably did need to be buffed, or no, it definitely
did not. So the one I'll give you credit for, is I think Prismatic Stand United actually should be 5. Believe it or not, I think Prismatic at 5, I think is correct as a Prismatic. But
I could see it at 4 still and still being good. Like after seeing what 5 is like this patch, but yeah, okay, go ahead.
But Stand United 1 at 3 has been one of, if not the most dominant tier 1 augments I've seen in a long time. The power boost it gives to Urgot comps, Yordle comps is just so massive. Because again, it's like, it's hard to appreciate because you look at a small number like 14 AD and AP, but then it's like we have so many champs that like Urgot not only gets the extra damage from the AD, but the extra ult time from the AP, and it ends up being so multiplicative on some of these champions that, like, yeah, I think this was a big whiff for at least for Stand United 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you compare it to at least numbers. You compare it to like Nice Edge, and you're like, this doesn't seem like that much. Most units only want one of these two stats. And it turns out, being able to, all your units can make use of this, and they generally do pretty well with both of them. So, ended up being too big of a buff.
Yep.
Wish we could do half numbers.
I mean, maybe we can consider it, but I don't think. I think Stand United was fine at 2. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Knife's Edge. This one's complicated. I think the nerf was correct, but I've also heard, and we need to verify it when we go back into work, I've also heard rumors that the nerf didn't work. That, like, it says the number on the tooltip, but it actually is giving more than it's supposed to. So
I saw that report. We'll have to check it when we go back.
We'll have to check tomorrow.
Easy check, if anything.
Yeah. The other thing is that we have that big bug with double Knife's Edge. When you have 2 Knife's Edge, half the time it doesn't work. So we still have to resolve that.
You have to move the units for it to work.
Yeah, but data-wise, it still actually seems a little good. So either the nerf was correct or the nerf did nothing. We'll have to verify.
Yeah.
Cram Session seems fine. It's still not exciting. People don't really take it. I think you said it best last time when we did the patch rundown. That's just like, the problem is the actual academy units don't want this.
Yeah. It's really good when you have an academy. This is like excellent when you have an academy spat.
Yep.
I think honestly, we didn't need to make this change. Like, it's like, it wasn't bad that we made this change, but it's like we could probably have saved one patch note by not making this change, because I don't think it actually made a difference.
We already talked about Broken Stopwatch. Okay, the Portable Forge stuff. I'm of the opinion the more, like, we buffed these a bunch and it made some dent, but not enough. I'm starting to be of the opinion that Portable Forge might not be a prismatic. It might need to be tuned around being a gold. Now, the nice thing is, let's say we make that decision, we can, reduce all the items to be a gold quality, like Collector gets nerfed, Anima Visage. Because right now it feels like Collector early, Anima Visage late. Other than that, who gives a shit?
Yeah, like none of the other ones are exciting to take. Some of them may be strong in specific, really specific scenarios, but like you don't gamble that by taking
Yep.
Portable Forge, then gambling the three options that show up.
Yep.
So I mean, yeah, I could totally agree with you that like if we balance around this being a gold augment, that might be
Yep.
a lot better and have all the options be viable choices.
All right, and now I'm going to talk about. I'm going to be real negative here for a second. I think this is the worst change in the patch. I think I should have caught this. I should have caught how bad this was going to be. The following augments will now appear slightly more often: Ascension, Cybernetic Implants, Knife's Edge, Makeshift Armor, Underdogs. I think this ended up being a giant whiff, and we did not tune around the fact that they appeared more often, and it led to Ascension, Knife's Edge, and Underdogs all being wildly OP.
Yeah, it was something that like, this change, the thought process behind this change was correct in that we wanted to create a bigger pool of generic augments
Yep.
that aren't tied to specific traits.
Yep.
But we needed to do more work basically to tune them before we
Yeah.
shipped.
Yeah, because I think it was good in that regard, because like I was kind of tired of seeing Thrill of the Hunt, Celestial Blessing, and Item Grab Bag in literally every game.
Right.
And if anything, for like mid set or whatever, we're gonna need more of these type of augments. But if Ascension is going to show up as a choice every game, or every other game, it can't be 75% damage,
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
All right. Academy, we slightly buffed it. I think this was correct. Academy verticals are still just okay. Very good if you have spatulas, though. Academy Fiora is pretty damn good.
Yep. I think this was definitely, I mean, directionally correct.
Yep.
So
Arcanist, I think this was correct. Arcanist 4, very slight nerf, which it kind of needed. It's very good early. Arcanist 8 buff, good. I still think Arcanist 8 is a bit of a hard to play comp because, again, all the Arcanists right now are very reliant on Socialite 2. So you end up wanting to play like 6 Arcanist with a Scholar, or even 4 Arcanist with Scholar to Socialite. Trying to go 8 Arcanist leads to not getting a lot of cast. That's the big weakness right now.
yeah, I actually think, I mean, I agree that like it's definitely still really hard to play. It feels like something that you play when you have a lot of mana generation. So like if you have Shojin, Jeweled Gauntlet, Victor, like yeah, play this comp. Your Victor
Yeah,
will delete
that's
everyone
true.
in one cast
That's true.
anyways, But it's like very specific. It's not like cool, just pivot into this no matter like if I see the soul and I don't have the right items for it.
Yep. Bruiser, we buffed 6. I think it's fine. I do think it slightly buffed the Urgot comp a little, but I don't think this was a big offender. And if anything, it's good for the long-term health of Bruiser comps.
Yeah, I think this was like directionally good change. Still don't really see it played that often at 6. So yeah, it was more like like to buff up the Trundle comp, which still doesn't really get played right now because reroll is not really being played that often.
Yep. All right, Imperial 5, we buffed it from 50 to 75%. That's a massive buff, and it became an Imperial meta, and everyone played Imperial 5 every game, and it ruined them. Oh, wait, no, Imperial 5 is still, like, one of the worst traits we've had in a long time.
Right.
We got some work to do on Imperial.
We do. I mean, like honestly, it's just about pumping more damage into the like Tyrant because that's Imperial 3 works. Imperial 5 just never really has success. And I never see people be successful with it.
Syndicate. I don't know how I feel about Syndicate. I really need to like get my thoughts together on Syndicate. I played a lot of Syndicate. I've top 2'd with like a Shaco 2 Syndicate that like made no sense. But at the same time, I've had Syndicate 7 Perfect Acalis and gone 5th. Syndicate is such a weird trait. I think it is struggling a lot because of Morello. I think Morello and Last Whisper are just like shutting down most of its benefits. I think the fact that it's Omnivamp, it requires you to do a lot of damage to really get the value out of it. It's such a hard counter trait. And then the way it scales from like 3 to 5 to 7 is very awkward. I think the jump from 5 to 7 isn't worth it. So overall, this felt like a miss to me. It felt like it didn't move the needle enough and didn't really do anything. So
yeah, I'm of the opinion that like I don't know, just I've seen because it's 60 armor and MR, it's almost like Darius would rather have this than Bodyguard early game if you had to make a choice between the two. And it's like, is that correct? As like for like the tank trait,
I
like,
think
it could
so.
be.
I think so, because if you
Yeah,
want to go Bodyguard, you've got Blitz and Poppy. And so Darius being the little one that was like, I'd prefer Syndicate. I'm okay with that. But the problem is, like, once you hit stage 3, it's like, did you hit Shaco? If no, what do? You know?
Zyra. Zyra is like sleeper OP damage. Zyra just like unreliable, but Zyra is
You're not
still
putting items on your Zyra. She does great damage, but you're
more.
not itemizing her.
Put damage on your Zyra. Trust me. Put damage on your Zyra. Stage 3? Oh yeah.
Sure.
Zyra.
If you want to
Zyra,
use her as
no.
an item holder, all right. I can see her as an item holder.
Then again, I don't know. It's like it's kind of weird just to see like units be so thingy, but I guess that's like the nature of the trait. So like maybe this was like directional. We needed to do something, and I think this definitely helped. The fact that I'm talking about Zyra carry in the mid game, so
yep,
I think it helped.
All right. Twin Shot. I think this was a success. I think Twin Shot 4 and 6 are at least a little more appealing now. Data wise, it actually looks okay. To good. I personally kind of wanted to buff Twin Shot 6 a little more, but data-wise, that actually looks like a mistake. I do think it is fun when you get like a 6 Twin Shot comp, how much damage it can dish out real quickly. It's definitely almost as fast as the 6 Challenger comp. So,
yeah, it needed this, and now that it's like a cool, fun comp, still not seeing that often that like really chase after, but could be the state of the meta. So,
all right, Camille. I think this nerf was correct. Fine. Darius. Yep. Darius is still really good. I think this nerf was correct. Kassadin. I think the mono reeve, 65% mono reeve. Thank God that's gone. So.
Yep.
There's a world where I think Kassadin could even go down to 35, but.
Maybe she's single target though. So
Yeah.
But yeah.
Blitzcrank. I think this nerf was needed. But
very sad.
Yeah, very sad, but very needed. Kog'Maw, I remember telling you I thought this should be 888. I still think it should be 888, but at least it was directionally the right way. So cool.
Yep.
Zyra change, good, sweet.
Yep.
Cho'Gath change, we'll talk about it in the B patch, but ended up being a giant whiff. I think Cho'Gath especially, it's like you give him 5 health, and because everything scales with percent and then star level, it ends up just like because he scales 1.8 for 2-star, 1.8 for 3-star, then off of that scales another X% for each stack he has. It's like it's so multiplicative, we just can't give him health.
Yeah, I mean, for those, like, I know you had tweeted about it too, where it's like, when we were doing this change, Cho'Gath looked so bad in the data, and then suddenly we made this change, and it wasn't even just this, it was just, the meta shifting around him. He suddenly became, like, the graph, like, flipped, and it was like, what in the world? So, like, using the knowledge we had at the time, I think that's, like, what we were supposed to do, but I think we also had to, like, be more careful about, like, nerfing things around, nerfing damage in general this patch, and then buffing one of the super tanks.
Well, and so, spoilers, you're going to find out that if you look at the data now, Cho'Gath 1 is the worst champ by far, Cho'Gath 2 is still quite bad, and Cho'Gath 3 is good. And so, again, I think the mistake here was using health as the lever. Alternatively, if we'd done something like armor and MR that doesn't scale multiplicatively with his star level, that might have been a better avenue to go.
Yeah.
So. Cool. Heimerdinger buff. This is Heimerdinger nerf, excuse me. Looking back on this, I think this was a mistake. I think Heimerdinger dishes out a lot of damage, but he's just so hard to play and so inconsistent and too risky. When he works, he's a god. But I think this was the wrong way to deal with Heimerdinger.
Actually, I mean, like, there's a Heimerdinger Vex comp out there, and it does work. It's just kind of more situational. But yeah, I don't like. We could have skipped this patch note. I think it would have been fine.
Lissandra nerf. This was definitely correct. Lissandra is a great utility champion still. She didn't need to be any better. That being said, now she's a little too tied to Morello. I think without Morello, she's trash, and with Morello, she's amazing. So we'll have to fix that. But I think this was at least good. And I think specifically the AD scaling was the big change that was necessary.
Yeah, and this is the patch we fixed her fizzling, and so we had to preemptively nerf her damage, which I think was like if we didn't, she would be way too strong right now. So
Samira nerf. I mean, no. Like it seems like a miss.
I mean, you can look at the data, and you can data and talk about how
I mean, has anyone nobody plays Samira? The Imperial's a dead trait. Like
no. Samira is actually feels like she's in a good spot if you bring down the ceiling. Like she will. She feels like you can still win with Samira, but then like because she can kill Kai'Sa's, but then once you bring down like the super capped comps, I think she's gonna be in a good spot. And I think this was so. I don't think this was a bad change. Do we need to do it? Maybe, maybe not. But
I mean, considering we ended up buffing her in the B patch, this feels like a miss. The one thing I'll give you is that if this was meant to be that power shift away from her autos into her spell, I think that is still directionally correct. I think her spell continues to be weaker than I'd want it to be. But from a champion power perspective, I still feel like this was a miss.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Like pumping more into her spell, making a chunkier spell. So,
Urgot mana buff. I mean, again, if we talk about the power level of a champion, this is a mistake. But for the identity of what he's supposed to do, I think this was correct. It just should have come with some actual damage nerfs also.
Yeah, at the moment we were okay with his DPS, but just like looking back, like looking at it now in hindsight, it's like we should have also needed to make this change, but we also should have shifted his DPS down a bit.
Yeah. I'll also say that playing over the break and looking at the data, I've kind of gotten some more understanding of Urgot. Right now, I think Urgot is a little too tied to Hurricane and Shiv, and I think we kind of underestimated his damage with those items specifically. And so we're gonna have to look at because I think IE Last Whisper Deathblade Urgot, not actually that scary.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I have to think about it some more and see how we should go about pushing Urgot.
Yep. Yone, I think this change was correct for the time, and we'll again talk about the B patch, but
big changes in the B patch.
For what we knew, this was correct.
Yep.
Ionic Spark finally feels like a balanced item. I think it's not a must slam like it was the previous patch, but it's still quite good. Ionic Spark seems good now. Be happy with that. Hyper Roll seems fine. Yep. Event mission points restructure. A bunch of bug fixes. Happy we got a bunch of bug fixes. Not going to go over all those. Fixing bugs is good. Okay.
The only one to call out, I guess, is the Kai'Sa one, right?
Oh, yes. Okay, where is it here? Lysandra. Okay, the Lysandra ones are necessary. Scouting, whatever. Units, miscalculated. Higher. Secret Extrovert. Twin Talons. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Monsoon season. Fix Kai'Sa failing to fire her monsoon missiles after dashing or if she was stunned. Okay, this is a controversial one because everyone was saying Kai'Sa wasn't fun because she would have to gather 150 mana, then she would do it and then get hit by a Braum ult or whatever, and she'd lose her ult. Now she has no weakness. She runs GA and her spell casts, and as long as she has Socialite 3 and can gain a bunch of health back and gain the mana back, there's nothing you can do to stop her. I think we are going to have to hold our ground a little harder when players say it feels bad to lose to my weakness. Because Kai'Sa's weakness was CC. Kai'Sa's weakness was locking her in place. She's a very mobile champion that gets to move around and dodge things. I think this was a massive mistake that I shouldn't have let go through. So, and I know that's controversial because players are going to say it feels bad, but that's her weakness,
Yeah, I mean, so she's kind of odd because she has a 2-part spell, and most units who get the first part of their cast off get the second part of their cast off too, and it's usually not as long as Kai'Sa's because hers is dash and shoot, but it's all in one cast. And so to me, this feels like having some sort of quality of life there feels necessary. Maybe this was not the right direction, especially because GA exists in our game. Maybe it was something about when she dashes, she'll in some smart way avoid CC. She doesn't dash into a Scion ult or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And a dumb version of this, I'll just say it is during the dash, she's immune to CC. So she gets to dash and not go through a Braum thing, but once she starts the missiles, if say she gets hit with something or GA, she stops, right? That might have been a better version that got us what we wanted without the she just randomly dashed into a Scion ult and lost her ult. But I think that's fair. But again, the end result here was now a champion that has no weakness.
I mean, technically, the weakness, it's kind of like Kale, right? The weakness is that like you need to be able to kill her comp, and if somebody builds perfectly around it, you need to be able to somehow like build stuff to shred through and look ahead. And it's like a frustrating way to play the
Yep.
game, because it's like, you know, something that you have to specifically counter because someone built a very specific comp to last forever, and put a guardian angel, which gives their, you know, gives them a safety net where you can
Yeah.
like drop targeting.
I
I think for as long as Guardian Angel exists in our game, I think like we should have like saw this coming, I guess, and like
yeah.
preemptively nerf the damage at least.
I think the Kale comparison is very apt, actually. That Kaisa is just a little too similar to Kale, where it's like perfect comp, right stuff. But all of that said, that also doesn't count the fact that she's like the best Morello applier in the game, also, right? Like even if you have just Morello Kaisa, nothing else, like that is already good enough. Toss on a GA and a second ult, because like she wipes most teams by the third ult, you know, and so.
But without like an itemized Scion with like, you know, tanky items, she's never getting to, it's really hard for her to get to that third ult. And like unless you have a really tanky front line, or like, you know, a Galio 2, for example.
Sure.
It's hard for her to get there. So it's kind of like a very specific setup with like super tanky Colossuses who might be too tanky.
I don't think she's as tied to Colossus as you're making it out to be, though. I think there are a lot of other comps that have worked pretty decently with her.
I mean, like the mutant Cho'Gath, but then it's like a super tanky Cho'Gath.
We'll see. But either way, I think this ended up being a much bigger deal than we thought it was going to be.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, yeah, a bunch of other small bugs, but that was definitely the big one. Yeah. Okay. So then, like I said, we had the A patch, very Cho'Gath meta. Cho'Gath and Akali was the big meta. So then we did the B patch because we had 3 weeks. Thank God we did, and it was a slightly larger B patch than normal. Unstable evolution nerf. I think this is correct. The augment's still good. It's still very good, especially if you 3-star like Malzahar and Cho'Gath.
Yep.
I think when it low rolls 2-star, it does feel really bad though. Like when you get AD Malzahar and you know, AP Cho'Gath, and you're like, God damn it. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean that's the nature of it's unstable, you know. But I think we did need to do this. We might have been able to go slightly harder on it because it seems really strong. But yeah, the low rolls can feel bad, so maybe it's fine.
Yeah, I think the low rolls feel really bad. So
yeah.
Windfall, we buffed it at 3-3 and 4-6. I think this change ended up working out really well. I think Windfall at 4-6 is now a very interesting augment. I do think though the comparison between Windfall and High Roller is really apt, where it's like I'm not sure why you would take High Roller. It almost seems like more gold efficient to take Windfall. But I think Windfall at 4-6 is now like a cool, like, I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna try to roll down. It might be a little too good as far as like getting to 9 though.
Yeah, I mean, with how strong the prismatics are, seeing 45 gold is really, really tempting. It does feel like sometimes it can be a math problem, like with the high roller thing. It's like, which one of these things, golden ticket, windfall, which one of these things will help me hit my upgrades more easily? And then you have to think like between the two. And math problems aren't really fun. But
hey, math is super fun.
we do it for our jobs, not for fun.
I you know, to each their own.
But yeah, I think this was a necessary change, and I think it was pretty good of a change. So
underdogs, I think underdogs might finally be balanced. It actually still looks good in the data. I think underdogs is probably finally where it's going to have to be. So
I still think like I think this is a good change. I still think it's a little bit too easy to hit the cap. But like if you know, it might be balanced now, and so like it is a situational trigger, so maybe that's fine.
Yeah, if you told me the cap's supposed to be 140 or 130, I wouldn't be shocked.
Oh, I mean, like it's too easy to hit the 150. It's like fewer units should be able to reach it as easily. So like maybe the heal percentage should be like 9 or something.
Oh, I see. I can see that. Ascension. I mean, I'm glad we nerfed it. Did we nerf it enough? Probably not. Probably not for this meta.
I think this one's on me. I think you had said 60, and I was like, that feels like a really large nerf. I was like looking at it, mathing it, and it was just like that seems huge. We should go safe. And then you're like, it's a B patch. We should go safe. Fine, do it. But we should have just went with your instinct.
I mean, 60. To be fair, my instinct was wrong too, because I think the actual answer is 50. I think I think it's wildly OP.
I don't think we would have ever gone down to 50 at like the time we were debating this though. But yeah, that's probably that. Like, could see that being right.
So again, spoiler. I know you haven't dug deep through the data yet, but spoiler: it doesn't actually look OP in the data. It's like high, low. It's like mid to high, but that's because it's now the most picked augment in the entire game. And so it
Ah,
turns out the most picked augment in the entire game being in the top 30%, probably not okay.
you know, it's kind of funny when I play my games and I scout around on 1.4 to see what augments people take. It's like some people are still deciding, but all the Ascension takers are like Ascension instantly. So
Yeah, Ascension. I think, like I said, I think Ascension's like 50 is the closest. So
yeah.
all right, Cassidon bug fix. Holy crap, this bug. You know, it's funny. All the way back in set 1, when I first started working on this job, the thing I told Medler was the hardest part about this job is you have to make the assumption that the game actually works. And that continues to be true 2.5 years later, because it's like we're trying to balance Cassidon around, like, here's these numbers. Why is he so tanky? Why am I watching him 1v9 3 people or 9? Like, what the hell? That one clip, I forget who showed it in lobby 2. That one clip was insane. And it's like, oh, well, it turns out he was stacking and having 99% damage reduction. Oops.
Yeah.
You know, so Jesus. All that being said, though, I think Cassidon is actually now pretty close to where he should be. So
Agree. Yep. This bug fix ended up being a really big nerf. I know people weren't sure of this, but it ended up. I think he's in a good spot now. Cassidon's in a good spot now. So.
Yeah, the comp's still playable. I still see the Kog'Maw Protector comp do well, to the point where, again, I think Kog'Maw 3 might need a nerf, but other than that,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, Darius nerf. I think this was correct. I think Darius is still one of the best stage 2 tanks in the game, so I think he's finally where he should be. You could tell, if you told me this was supposed to be 115, I'd believe it. Like, maybe it was a tiny bit hard, but overall, I think Darius is where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, to me, it felt like a good change and it felt correct. So,
Cho'Gath. So we undid the health nerf and nerfed his mana and nerfed his AD. Did we overswing? Maybe. I mean, again, so like I told you, spoiler in the data, 1-star Cho'Gath looks like the worst champion in the game again. 2-star Cho'Gath looks really, really bad. But 3-star Cho'Gath looks quite good. But again, I also think in a Morello Kaisa meta, Cho'Gath is going to suffer. I think this is the problem with balancing stacking champions. It's like their potential ends up being so high that when you don't hit, it's awful. So I'm not really sure what to do about Cho'Gath anymore. Like I said, next step I think might be some armor and MR, but otherwise, yeah.
yeah, I could see that. I think the mana nerf was correct. Like nerf is stacking, but yeah, we ended up going too far on like even that, like with the health revert and the mana nerf, and then the AD I think was also necessary because Colossus just hit too hard. So
okay, Samira, I gotta talk about this one. Samira, we originally put out the patch note preview when we were doing the B patch, and we had this spell number up to 190 at 2-star. And everyone started freaking out. And Twitter and a bunch of players were like, this don't do this. This is insane. It's gonna be Samira only meta. And we're like, okay, let's play it cautious. Let's go down to 180. You know what we should have done? We should have stuck to our damn guns and been stubborn. This was a call where we should have been correct, because Samira is, I know you and I are kind of debating this, but I think Samira is not good enough. I think Imperial is not good enough. And this could have been 190 and it would have been just fine.
I don't disagree that it would have been just fine. I think Samira is still in like a decent spot. I mean, like, I think.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Does Samira need a buff next patch? Yes or no?
I would argue no, and we just need to nerf the things around her that are.
Okay.
I've been playing a decent amount of Samira this patch, and I found success.
Fascinating.
If we do something with like the stuff around her, as in I know you're not going to nerf Sion, so like if we're not nerfing Sion, I think we just nerf the other strong comps around her. She will not need a buff.
Okay.
That being said, if this shipped at 185, 190, 200, probably would have been fine too. We just would see more Samira this patch, and then next patch we'd have to decide if we nerf everything else, do we need to nerf her? But
like I said, Imperial.
Yeah, I know you disagree.
Well, yeah, I mean, Imperial looks so bad in the data. Like even Imperial 3 looks mediocre. But now keep in mind, we might not buff Samira. We might just buff the trait and Talon and Swain. That's an option too. But yeah, I think Samira does just not function as a primary carry right now. All right, Vex. I think this helped. I will say, I think Vex 2 is still not quite strong enough, is my honest opinion. I think he's okay. Now, the dangerous part here, though, is if Vex gets much stronger, like Yordle farming gets really good because right now it's Ziggs, Vex, Poppy is the best Yordle farm in the game. So there's kind of some danger here. Vex is in that really awkward spot. Vex 3 is quite good, especially itemized Vex 3, but at least this got Vex back to like playable.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something as small as like 50 health on a Vex to help Vex 1 and Vex 2. I mean, it helps Vex 3 also, but like something small like that. We could also go super safe and go with the shield. But yeah, Vex does feel like she needs, like, this was directionally good, probably could have been slightly more aggressive.
Okay, Fiora getting extra healing. I think this was fine. Again, Fiora feels like a 4 cost right now. I think there's separate from balance, we have this problem where Fiora and Yone are so hard bound to each other, but like Fiora feels good.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this could have been 25%, could have been slightly more, but like, yeah.
I don't think Fiora needs buffed. I'm actually happy with where, like, to be honest, when I was doing my like fake patch notes, I was considering Fiora nerfs. So like, I think this is good.
I mean, if it was like, we take off some of her damage and put it into like the heal, I just feel like she doesn't heal enough without like a healing something, some sort of healing benefit. Yeah, that
that's
kind
true.
Of thing. So, yeah.
Okay, the Yone bug fix. So thank you for Fight for the Golden Spatula. They helped us find out that Yone's clone was getting double benefit. Pretty crazy. Props to you. I think the tuning actually ended up pretty damn close. I think Yone's still good. I think challenger comps are still good. I think Yone's probably right where he should be. Actually, I think you nailed it.
I was nervous about this one. Like, did a lot of math, like definitely, and Sims, but like definitely still nervous about this one. And I'm glad it ended up shipping well. If he's in a good spot, we nerf everything else, then Yone will get even more like chance to shine and back to where he should be. One thing that I am like iffy about is like I was hoping this would help non-vertical Yone be a lot better. And like sometimes you see the 4 Academy 4 challengers with like some stats, but like don't really see a two challenger type of Yone really popping off anywhere with like a Rage Blade or anything like that. So yeah.
Galio. Well, again, Clapio turns out was still too strong, nerfed. Turns out I think Galio is still too strong, but the thing we're struggling, I think, with Galio right now is that Galio 1 is kind of garbo, and Galio 2 is like actually insane. And you'll notice a common pattern here. Cho 1 and 2 bad, Cho 3 good. Scion 1 bad, Scion 2 good. Galio 1 bad, Galio 2 good. It turns out being tied to 1.8x scalar on an 1800 health champion, little much. So
yeah, Colossus are so tough to balance for that reason. Just like the 1 star is going to be so bad, the 2 star is going to be insane, and then like the 3-star Cho'Gath are just impossible to kill.
Yeah, this is, if we're ever going to do something like Colossus again, that's where I start to look at that 1.8x hardbound HP and AD rule, and I'm like, is that really helping us at this point?
Yeah, I agree.
Because the sad reality is I think Galio is, like I said, the 3rd best champion in the game right now under Kaisa and TK. So.
Yep.
Which, I mean, he's a 5 cost, he should be, but like not as a damage dealer, maybe. So
yeah.
Speaking of 5 costs, so we nerfed Akali. And I think Akali is one of those champions that if you asked players, they'd say she's probably still too good. I think a lot of players are like, IE, Archangel, GA, Akali 2 still wrecking. But interestingly enough, data-wise, Akali looks like the worst 5 cost now by a pretty big margin. Does that mean Akali's probably where she should be? Yeah, maybe. I certainly wouldn't buff Akali at this point. I if anything, Syndicate might be the thing that needs love, not Akali. But I think Akali, like I said, is probably where she should be right now.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Blizz, new design art team, but he decided to nerf the execution threshold, and I think that was a really good change because it helps with her healing too. I think it's just Akali, it might be tied to like 7 Syndicate not being good enough or something related to that. We'll have to look into it more. But it's like, yeah, I feel like buffing Akali more, especially if we nerf the other 5 costs. I think it'll be.
I think risky. She's another champ that's also hard bound to Socialite 2, and maybe even Socialite 3. So I think that's a big problem we have right now is Socialite 2 is just so much mana that like champions are really bound to that right now.
Yeah.
Chemtech. So we nerfed Chemtech 3. Good. That was good. We buffed Chemtech 7 and 9. That was good. Directionally good. Not quite enough. So
I agree. Directionally good, not quite enough overall. Yeah.
Protector shield duration. This is another one I got a lot of hate for, where players were like, "This isn't gonna do anything. Those protector shields never last that long." It did something. It was a good change. If anything, protectors might be a tiny bit too weak now, maybe, but like, I'm kind of happy with where they are right now for a reroll comp. And so,
And this was specifically for Protector
Protector
Cho'Gath
Cho,
also.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. So, mission accomplished. Archangel nerf, good.
Imagine
Holy
if we
crap!
didn't do this.
Oh fucking. Because man, like a call, specifically Kaisa, the way she scales, like her base with them, it's like so multiplicative. I'm so glad we did this.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
I know there were some like challengers were like, we're never building this, and then turns out it's one of the most built items,
yep.
and so.
I mean,
But
the
really,
slower meta helped for sure, right? Turns out in a slow meta, a double death cap at 20 seconds or whatever, pretty damn good. So
yeah. To be fair to the challenger players, a lot of times when you see numbers, it's kind of hard to equate it to like how you can't predict how the meta will end up, and so like because the meta ended up being a lot slower, this ended up not being as like huge of a nerf as it sounded like, and it still ended up being good. So
yep.
yeah, ended up in a good spot.
Yep. Bramble Vest nerf, fine. It's still a damn good item. If
Yes.
anything, we might have to do the whole thing where it's like not reducing crits completely because it's so binary right now.
Yeah, I like adding a lever to that
Yep.
might be necessary in the future. So
And then the bug fixes. These were very silly bug fixes. We talked about the Yone one already. We talked about the Kassadin one. There was some trick where you could get an Archangel stacked up and then play it the next round. Glad that exploit's gone. And then props to one of my mods for finding the 6 sniper affecting the whole team. Lol. So glad that got fixed. I mean, that one probably didn't make a huge difference, but it's still good to fix that. So
yeah, it's just those weird scenarios where like, oh, why did my Orion do so much damage? And so this was a really silly bug,
yep.
but good to fix.
Yep. All right. So that was the whole patch, and now we've been playing it for 3 weeks. And I swear to God, if I see someone ask me to nerf Kaisa one more time, I might gouge my eyes out and go blind. They're not wrong, but I can only read that line 2,000 times before it's like, okay, I get it, and I can't do anything because we're on Christmas break. So
Yeah.
And I will admit, like playing this meta, because like I'm a kind of player that really likes to play a strong early game. I don't know how many times I messaged you where I'm like, I'm 100 HP at 4-2.
Yep.
I'm 100 HP at 4-2. I got 5th.
Yeah.
Yay! Because
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar place. I mean, I sometimes play like the greedy play style too, but like yeah, it's just so many times where you're like so healthy and suddenly it's like, oh my god, I might actually go 6 here. Like, what the heck just happened? Why do people have 2-star 5 costs on 4-5? That kind of thing. But it's just having like the fact that it's such a long patch. I think that drives some of the player frustrations too, where it's just you've been seeing the same thing over and over again, and you're ready for it to be nerfed, and you're just waiting, and people aren't really in tune with our patch cycles and things like that, and they don't know where else to point to, and unfortunately, you're the face, and so they just
no, I know.
yeah, but
like I said, I'm ready for it too. I'm ready for a new meta. Dear God.
No, I'm pretty sure like a week and a half ago, you're like, Ken, I'm tired of Kaisa.
Yeah. So, well, new patch tomorrow, or I guess this is airing Monday, so new patch in 2 days. You and I have to work on it basically tomorrow. So
all day.
Yeah, and we have to get it done real quick.
Yep.
Cool. I will say though, this patch did reveal a lot of longer term projects as well. So, and for that regard, it's one of those like painful moments that I think will be healthy for the long term of TFT, but short term, we had to suffer through some crap to get here. So.
And also, just on a positive note, it's like the meta wasn't that. There's a lot of things that are like can be played, and you can play it. Like you might not always end up first because that Kaisa 2 Gallery 2 is going to take first, but you can end up top 4, top 2, top 3, and play something that's like not exactly cuttered. So like it's not a bad patch, just too long and let people optimize one specific build way too far.
I said this on stream, but if anything's going to be meta warping, a 5 cost is the least damaging meta warping thing. Because at least it only happens in the back 10% of the game. So
yeah, definitely.
So, all right, cool. That's it for this patch post-mortem. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Again, this is us just being honest about what we did right, what we did wrong, where we ended up, and where we're going. So, Kent, any closing thoughts?
No, I'm just really ready for this patch to be over. I think we learned a lot from this. So yeah,
cool.
Really ready for the next patch.
Cool. All right, that's gonna do it from us. Until next time, as always, take it easy.